Hello everyone, my name is Tiia Sammalahti and I'm the founder and CEO of whatCharity.com. Welcome to this Roundtable event where we're going to discuss about charity corporate collaboration. We are quite excited here doing our first YouTube live streaming, so I hope that it all works well. Yes, so whatCharity.com conducted a survey among charities in the UK. It was a nationwide study and we gave 558 answers from different sized charities. We asked charities how they collaborate with companies at the moment and how they would how they would like to collaborate with companies in the future. What would be the most beneficial resources that they could use to create the best impact in our society? We have invited here like a panel discussion, 5 tremendous professional specialists on the charity company collaboration field to discuss our survey results, but also share their own insight from their work experience related to charity company collaboration. And let's go to the panelists and they can introduce themselves to you. Is Jonathan starting? Yes.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Booth. I'm an associate professor at the London School of Economics. I study employee volunteering and corporate volunteer programs.
Hello, I'm Katarina and I help startup founders, mostly tech startup founders, to build their teams here in London.
Hi, I'm Tom Levitt. I'm a writer and consultant on responsible and sustainable business, working with both corporates and SMEs, and indeed anyone else as well, and I'm the author of a book called The Company Citizen.
Hi, I'm Janine Edwards. I am Head of Consultancy and Development for the Foundation for Social Improvement, the FSI, an organisation that supports over 6,000 small charities working across the UK and internationally. I'm also a trustee of a mid-sized charity that provides residential treatment and other services for severely addicted gamblers.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Martin and I am a director for Wonderland Ventures, which is a digital marketing agency, and I'm here representing Hounslow Action for Youth. We are a charity based in Greater London and we serve at-risk young people who are in times of crisis and who are looking for direction, support and coaching.
Okay, welcome everyone. Very excited to start this conversation. So first, Tom. Our survey stated that 50% of charities get money donations from companies and 60% of charities get volunteers or any kind of gifts in kind or goods and services. Why would companies in general need to help charities?
Well, I'd like to think it wasn't just a question of altruism and philanthropy or that terrible word, giving back. Whenever anyone talks about giving back, I'm tempted to ask them what it was they took in the first place. But I think it makes very good business sense to have positive partnerships which can engage employees, particularly if what they're doing is related to the mission or purpose of the business. So if we look at, for example, the new partnerships that were recently announced between Tesco and 3 charities on diabetes, on cancer and on health generally, British Heart Foundation. This was all about aligning missions, and it would be all about delivering a common purpose, and it will not just be a fundraising exercise. I think what's really interesting from a bit of research done by the Dell Foundation a year or so ago was that whereas 5 years ago most charities wanted money, today most charities that they work with, 800 charities around the world, wanted capacity building, they wanted access, they wanted influence, and that was more important than just cash.
Yeah, so I believe that is, the companies can lift the charities in the totally next level if there is that kind of a lengthy collaboration that people, have the patience to stick with them and offer skills and strategic help. Is that what you're saying?
And absolutely. And I think this goes beyond the conventional idea of CSR.
Yeah.
CSR is too often, to my mind, seem to be something which is an add-on, an optional extra, and it's about fundraising, riding bikes and baking cakes, rather than about bringing about change in society, which at the end of the day is what a company citizen, if I could coin that phrase, or a purpose-led business will want to do. And one of the reasons they will want to do it is because when employees buy into that mission, then they actually become more engaged with the company, they become more productive, and they become a greater asset for the company if they're part of a common mission than if they're simply than if the employees are simply seen as tools in the company's toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so our survey stated that yes, charities don't only benefit from like a regular volunteering, kind of unskilled volunteering, maybe planting trees or serving soup from the soup kitchen, but 70% of charities would like to have skills-based volunteers, and 40% of the charities get it now. 45% of charities would like to have companies mentoring them, and only 10% of charities get it now. Jonathan, you are one of the rare academics who actually studies corporate volunteering. Could you give us some insight how the companies really benefit from it? What does it deliver to companies?
Sure, no problem. So in a recent publication in the Academy of Management Journal, colleagues and I determined that there are two drivers that actually lead to the emergence of corporate volunteering climates. And what we find is the first and most powerful driver is actually employees' passion for the cause, which I think is a no-brainer. Number two is the support that the employer provides to the employees to actually volunteer. So I'm talking about flex time, time off, financial contributions, I'm talking about access to facilities, logistics, etc. And so these two drivers drive corporate volunteering climates, and it's through these climates that actually lead to this idea of collective pride within the organization, belongingness, and organizational commitment. And what we're finding is that we see these relationships not only with volunteers, but also with those that are not volunteering currently in the program. And actually, what is even really interesting is the non-volunteers are actually indicating that they are willing to behave in the future. They're wanting to actually volunteer in the future. So these climates are driving potential behavior, which I think provides opportunity for the programs, nonprofits, and the employers. Okay.
So you were mentioning first about the passion for the cause. So are the models where company is kind of deciding in like a director's level that we are now supporting, let's say, heart disease, prevention, and is it over? Should companies let people choose what they want to support?
I think that's a good question, and I think that's something that we need to research in the field, both qualitative research and survey-based. But I do know that employees do not like being told to volunteer. In fact, they resent it. They feel so much pressure, and they believe it's not their choice.
And it's not volunteering.
And it's not necessarily volunteering. And we call it voluntolding, really. And so what I would say is that if the employer can, give your employees choice, give them some autonomy, let them have some control. Okay? And we do see some employers, especially when in good economies, when the economy is good, that sometimes employers let their employees have this autonomy. They provide them the benefits and say, you choose. For example, American Express used to provide their employees, once they had a certain level of tenure in the organization, they would have a couple of months to go and volunteer for an organization or nonprofit that they so choose to do. So there are those companies that do allow this. We would like to see more.
And actually, even within the charity sector itself, I think there could be more about releasing capacity for people to volunteer in that way as well. So my employer, the FSI, has a policy that enables us to have 2 matched days per year. So if I take 2 days of my annual leave to work with a small charity, which is one of our core beneficiaries, that is then matched by my employer to give me 2 additional days. And that choice is mine how I use that time, so I use it to fulfill my trustee responsibilities, but it creates the environment so I'm not being told. And I certainly think that reflects our experience in our programs delivering we run a program called Emerging Executives that matches talent from organisations into the boards of small charities, and definitely echoing that passion for the cause, but also the employers taking or creating the environment where they're actually able to go to meetings, participate fully as a trustee, contribute, prepare. All of those things need to happen for successful relationships to really flourish.
I'd like to follow up to that point. Most employees do not realize that their employer provides these benefits.
Yeah.
In fact,
Because many don't.
many do not, but
Yeah.
even the employers or organizations that do provide, employees had no idea. And so I think that the employer needs to in some way educate their employees that these policies, practices are available. And I think it would be smart, because if you truly value as an organization or espouse these values of volunteering and charitable behavior, you would want to communicate this to the public. You would want to communicate this to those potential applicants that you're trying to attract to be future employees. You know, you would put it in your branding, you put it in your value statements, etc. And not many organizations are doing this effectively.
Statistics tell us that there are 11 million UK employees who are offered volunteering opportunities, and company expectations might be 20% the attendance, but it actually might be a couple of percent. And there needs to be definitely some kind of encouragement. So maybe it's about the cause that you said, choose your own cause, and then there has to be this encouragement facilitating it, or otherwise you can't just say that go out and volunteer, because it's just too kind of a vague of a ask.
And it goes back to your branding and your mission statement and your value statements too. If you're not advertising that to the public and not attracting those people that value the same values you espouse, then how are you supposed to build this passion for the cause within your organization?
I think with team volunteering, if I can be controversial for a moment, there are some companies which exist only to organise team volunteering days for big corporates. I shared a platform with a big bank at a conference on volunteering in Australia a couple of years ago. And they used that platform to announce that they were henceforth banning team volunteering days.
Yes.
And the reason for that was because A, they weren't very effective, and B, they were damaging the reputation of the bank. Damaging the reputation of the bank, of all people. And that was because people would turn up enthusiastic in the morning, but this was Australia, and at lunchtime there's a few bits of amber nectar got consumed, and the low numbers of people who came back in the afternoon and the quality of the work they were delivering in the afternoon was damaging the reputation of the bank. And I think those companies that organise these events are just interested in the numbers. They're not talking about the impact. And they sell them to companies as team building days, not as impact-led volunteering days.
Yes.
And to our knowledge, not this research, but if we get from the corporate side, because we are developing a corporate tool to utilize our site for corporate volunteering more effectively and with your own choosing course, and also how easily it can facilitate those kind of activities in the charitable sector. So we've been interacting a lot with companies, but we don't think that the intentions are necessarily like bad. They wouldn't be just, this is just for our reputation, we don't care about the charitable activity. They do, but there's a lot of lack of knowledge of what is kind of impactful and what is not. So FSI, you work with several companies, but also with small charities. What are the challenges here or opportunities when it comes to matching local small charities who might be addressed by companies and they're seeking for team days out or kind of that kind of a group activities?
Well, I think, as you say, it's almost taking a step back. There's that sort of educational and awareness that's sometimes needed within corporate settings to understand how they can truly deliver value and impact to the small charity. I'm coming from that small charity perspective. I think certainly on the volunteering side, that skills-based volunteering, I've seen some great examples of where, it can be something that could be done as a small team potentially, but where a group of marketing and communications experts came in and gave 4 or 5 days of pro bono consultancy effectively to the charity, supported them through a rebrand, devised a marketing and communication strategy, and then used their networks and their own budgets to pay for all the printing and materials for their first year. So that's made a tremendous impact on their organisation.
Sure.
It's enabled them to raise their profile in the local community, and it will enable them to be more sustainable in the future. So that's a phenomenal impact in that way.
So Katarina, you are working with startups, but you have also charity experience, and you are trying to acquire the best talents to companies. You really want them to be engaged and also kind of focus on retention. How do you see that these startups who have limited resources but might be very potential growth companies or are growth companies, you know, how could they operate in the charitable world, you know, better? What could kind of benefit them that would also benefit the charities?
Yeah, well, people are increasingly, I think, interested in the social impact aspect of companies that they are like planning on working with or working at. And this is an interesting question to pose to the startup founders as well. It kind of challenges them and brings these issues in the daylight as well, and they have to start thinking about what are the values and do we have values. And I think that for startups, it should always start internally. So they just have to make sure that there would be some kind of core values, and then they could start kind of using like a certain language within the company as well, and that would make it kind of real as well. Because if you just put on your website that you support diversity or LGBT rights or something, it doesn't mean anything. It's the language that is used at the workplace, and that's kind of starts creating this more inclusive environment, and that's kind of one way of starting to kind of think about other engagement as well. So that's one way.
So collaborating with charities would make the values tangible.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it definitely, when we talk about for-profit companies, usually the people are interested in measuring the impact and seeing the metrics as well.
Yes.
So I think that good way is to just think about any project that would have like a start and ending as well.
Yes.
So that would probably be interesting to any people to engage in like these extra activities as well, that they could see the value of their work as well, and not just kind of giving something and not knowing what happened there, but actually seeing okay, I did this, even though it's a small thing, but yeah.
Of course, everybody wants to make a difference. That's the point. And Cheryl, you represent a small charity with big impact. You run a community center, but also other services. But you're a small operator. So how would you want to be approached by a company? I mean, what would help you the best?
I mean, I think initially the idea is daunting. Even if you just say companies, I looked at our local patch recently. We're based in the western part of the borough of Hounslow. And there are 750 large corporates. So we're talking 250 employees or more, 50 million in turnover. That sounds maybe manageable, but then let's look at these small and medium enterprises, 14,000. And we're taking a very small radius, maybe about 15 to 20 miles tops. And so that's a wealth of opportunity, but it's also then a wealth of information. How do we identify and match ourselves based on our mission and values, based on the kinds of relationship that we want to develop with those organizations that will have long-term potential? So getting the right two-way visibility, that we are visible to them and that their activities are visible to us. And to that point, from Janine's point of view, there's a difference between creating a space for volunteerism and modeling the values of your organization through volunteerism. And so we want organizations on that side of the fence.
Yes.
That I think is key. So it's not just the logo on the website or a line in the annual report. It's about knowing how that's communicated, how that's replicated throughout the organization. So having that kind of visibility. The second is engagement. I mean, there are best practices for every industry and sector. We're a small charity, so our focus has been on our core, which is delivering programs to at-risk youth. Absolutely, we have that skill set, we're award-winning, we have models that could even be used nationally. When you then say, okay, do you have the skills to approach a large corporate or a medium-sized enterprise? Do you know what their priorities are? Do you have a sense of their commercial leanings and their opportunities? Well, that's a whole new kettle of fish. So how could we engage? And if you think about a large corporate, it might be a web of CSR initiatives, departments, stakeholders. In a medium enterprise, it might be a formalized funding proposal. In a small organization, it might be reaching out on social media. These are very disparate channels to then master the skills of. So that engagement piece is critical. So even if we find each other, how do we then talk to each other? Once we're talking, then do we have the resource to put a very strategic plan in place for developing those relationships with high potential? And do we have the operational infrastructure? And that's hardware and software, that's training and development, and sometimes it's bodies. Quite frankly, it's someone who will then manage those relationships. So those are the challenges that we face, and I'm sure many in our space would as well.
So our study also said that those charities who don't collaborate with companies at all, which is in total 22%, 25% of them said that the reason is that they don't have skills or resources to do social impact reporting. And social impact obviously is the kind of, did they reach their goals and did they actually make the change, what they were kind of aiming to do, which would be crucial for charity to know, not just from the corporate perspective, but because of their own existence. Should they even exist? You know, if they're not reaching positive impact, then you have to review the whole kind of model. But this was stated as a kind of an obstacle. And yes, I have to just say a little piece here that yes, we at the whatCharity are trying to make this easier for charities now in digital format on our website to present kind of aim impact, but we're also developing a social impact reporting tool that they would be able to report what actually happened previously, but that's to come. But I'm just asking that what kind of kind of general models there should be for small charities like you that could be reported that any company could kind of relate to and utilize that material, so you wouldn't have to think about this like every time you approach a company that what do they want? Is there any like a model for this?
It's quite challenging, isn't it? Because the impact of charities is felt in so many different ways, and the impact that Cheryl's charity delivers is going to be very different to the environmental charity that's operating across Greater London or the homeless charity running in Bristol. So it almost risks, if you try and find a one-size-fits-all approach, it risks us coming back to outputs instead of the conversation about what changes.
And you mean outputs by just clarifying, it means kind of like a numerical kind of deliverables,
not what changed.
Not really kind of a long-term kind of a change, what you then,
And I think, I've just completely lost my train of thought. Sorry, I think it comes back to what you were saying though, to pick up on your point, Cheryl, is that it's about that early matching. So we deliver a training course as part of our services and support for small charities. One of our topics is developing corporate partnerships. And one of the very first things that we do as an exercise is what do we do, what does it achieve? And who would be interested in that? Who's the audience and the particular group of corporates to narrow down your 14,000? How does that impact on a group of people? So if you are that homeless charity in Bristol and you're providing a route for people to come off the street, then actually those local businesses whose doorways are being kept in, for example, may have an interest in that. So it's about using your outcomes to actually find that match.
Yeah, maybe breaking it down to smaller projects and kind of then thinking about what does success look like in this particular project.
I think it's interesting that the charity law has forever said that a charity exists to deliver public benefit, but nobody's ever decided one way of measuring public benefit. How do you know that one delivers more public benefit than another? At the other extreme, so many CSR reports have in them, our company delivered 10,000 hours of volunteering this year. But 10,000 hours is an input, it's not a measure of change at all.
Yeah.
And those people could have delivered no public benefit, but it would still go on as 10,000 hours of input. So I'm doing some work with the British Standards Institution to see if we can't rationalise the field of measuring. We're calling it measuring social value, because technically they're not necessarily impacts, as you say, they're more likely outputs and outcomes rather than impacts. But there are at the moment, someone told me recently, 1,100 different ways of measuring social value, and that needs to be rationalised.
Yes.
There needs to be a common currency, even if there isn't a common method. There needs to be a common currency in which we talk about.
And I think this is interesting that, because there are so many different kind of charities and also measurement methods, and also they're very complicated, and also the results might be very lengthy reports and all that. So please, Tom, do your bit. That's very important. And we will then make it to people's language that anybody can understand it, and in the format that people have time to read it.
Yes.
Because that's also the point that any donor, volunteer, whether they are corporate volunteer or just individual volunteer, should be able to understand the difference what they're making quite easily. People otherwise, they don't spend the time, and then they are not engaged in the activities. One thing I want to ask from Tom is that we got a response from 35% of charities who didn't get any company support. They said that their cause is not interesting enough for companies. Are companies preferring like these cute and sexy kind of type of causes and then leaving the difficult, the nasty ones out?
Well, I have a theory that companies who ask their employees to vote on what their charity of the year should be are more likely to pick out distant starving children or small fluffy animals. And that actually it needs to be more rational than that. And I think it's ideal that companies who look for not necessarily the only CSR type or community engagement type operation, but that a substantial part of that operation will be on something which has a shared mission. So we see, for example, Andrews, which is a nationwide system of estate agents. I mean, they do a lot of work in fundraising for homelessness charities.
Yes.
A lot of the big construction companies have partnerships with Shelter. So you can see the common mission there. I mentioned earlier Tesco with nutrition, charities dealing with health and nutrition. So that is, I think, where the common mission comes. And I think it's always going to be easier to sell a common mission, but I appreciate that sometimes the common mission isn't there, and sometimes the passion might be, but nevertheless, even the smallest charities still have issues around management, around marketing, around budgeting, auditing that need to be done. And those can very often be done by volunteers from businesses.
Yes.
And in the case of something like auditing or designing a website, even the very smallest business can find a few hours to do that. And it's probably more efficient for them to spend a couple of hours doing some auditing than 5 hours picking litter.
Katarina, one question, because the startups want to be many times, or growth companies, they want to really focus on building their brand and being distinctive, kind of finding the USPs. Could there be an option for charities that have these kind of not so popular causes matching with these companies who want to stand out? Because that would make kind of, you understand what I'm saying, that it might kind of give a good twist for their brand, that they would have a charity partners who wouldn't be so common.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in general it would be great to see more cooperation there, because charities and startups have a lot in common. It's all about fundraising in the end as well. But it's not a joke. Yeah. But I definitely, and I think it was very interesting what you said earlier as well about the company kind of mentioning it in the beginning already, that there is that option to volunteer. So then it's not even stating anything specific in the very beginning, and kind of narrowing it down to certain cause. So when you just say that there is an opportunity for the employer to volunteer and we would support that, that already kind of makes it attractive for someone and kind of shows that there are these types of like values and interests at place. So yeah.
You were saying?
I just, there was something that really struck me about what Tom was saying in terms of having a strategic intent behind your choice of charity. And I love fluffy animals, I do. But I can see a real practical value, and I'd love to see if this is borne out in the research, that the leverage that you get when you stay roughly within industry, I would expect that multiplier to be far greater.
Yes.
Because you have the existing networks, you have a certain personal brand that you might be bringing as an individual. People know that I work in X sector. They know that I've stumped for causes like this in the past. Supplier relationships, as you were mentioning, in terms of getting printing and so on. Well, if you've already got those pipelines in place, the leverage factor, I think, would just be so much greater. And I just was hoping we could speak to that.
Let me give you a really nice example of exactly that. I came across an employment agency in the East End of London with about, I think, 15, 16 employees. And obviously they can measure their success. It's the number of people they get into work. And they decided, as part of their community engagement strategy, was to give the services which they provide every day, pro bono, to local charities who are helping unemployed school leavers and even graduates in a deprived part of London to get into work. And they were able to demonstrate 6 months later that their input had been more effective than other inputs, because obviously they were applying professional skills to this, not just giving help writing a CV or interview practice, but giving of their experience and knowledge as well. And not only was this leading to massive increase in the employee engagement, but people were actually approaching the business and saying, I hear this is what you do, I'd like to be part of that, can I come and work for you? So the values which they were demonstrating was actually helping them get a better selection of people wanting to come and work for them as well.
Absolutely.
They hadn't predicted that outcome, but it happened.
One startup founder that I was working with just told that because it's this business where they use delivery drivers or riders, and they would give opportunities for ex-offenders. And I think that was particularly interesting and a great thing to kind of engage with, because it has a clear impact and definitely would be something that I'm sure that the other employees would be proud of as well, to be working in a company that actually makes that kind of change as well. And then obviously that would open doors to then cooperate with some charities that are maybe working with ex-offenders as well. So I think that it always just needs to be meaningful, and it needs to be like a just clear mission. And
to be honest, I think working with ex-offenders is actually one of the real success stories, in that there's now a lot of companies, Waits, the construction company, Timpson's, Interserve and others, who specifically not only work with ex-offenders after they leave prison, but they actually go into the prisons and work with them before they leave prison as well. So it is a strategic approach, yes.
Thank you very much. I think our time is up, or has been already a little while. Just wanted to say that whether you are a company representative, you're individual volunteer or donor, please go to whatCharity.com and start finding new charitable partners. You can find their details, their mission, their impact, whatever resources they are needing, and you can just scout them in your local area as well. And if you already have your favorite charity, I hope you can find the charity on our website, and please give them testimonials. I guess the testimonials are one of the greatest thing what charity can have, and I can tell those charities who get kind of peer-to-peer recommendation factors, they tend to succeed. So any charity that has kind of your testimonial is more likely to get other resources from other people as well. So giving that feedback is very important. But anyway, I want to thank you everyone for participating in this. I hope we can do this sometime again, because there will be other topics and there will be a lot of things to discuss. And I also, one thing wanted, Jonathan, we were discussing earlier about some potential research that you would like to be doing in the future. Right. So just giving, you can advertise your intention. Because,
so some projects that we are currently working on, designing some studies, are looking at corporate programs, corporate volunteering programs actually being a retention tool for employees. Mm-hmm. Also, we speak in the literature how employees gain skills on these volunteering opportunities. Well, we actually want to know, do these skills actually transfer to the actual job? Yeah. We don't know that, and actually we don't really know if skills are gained. So we're looking at designing some work in that area as well. Okay. But if you have any interest for research, etc., please contact me.
Yeah, Jonathan Boot, LSE. Anyway, hey, thank you so much for everyone, and everyone's title is found in the YouTube recording, and you will be finding the people, some of them in Twitter, and you're always happy to give their contact details to you if you want to approach them. Tia at whatcharity.com. Thank you for your time. Bye bye.